Hey, guys. Welcome back to Silent Screams. Tonight, I've got something for you that'll make you rethink ever being home alone again. You know that feeling when you're sitting in your house, maybe watching TV, and suddenly you hear something, a creak in the floor, a whisper of movement just out of sight? What if that feeling wasn't just in your head? What if it was something more? Tonight's story is one of those. It's about a night that started off like any other, but ended in a way you'll never forget. Grab a blanket, turn off the lights, unless you're too scared, and get ready for some true creepy horror stories, chilling home alone nightmares that will haunt you. I'll never forget that night. It's burned into my brain like a bad dream that never really fades away. My parents had gone out of town for the weekend, and I was left alone in the house. Now, don't get me wrong, being home alone was usually no big deal. I was used to it. I'd spend most of the night watching TV, maybe ordering a pizza, playing some games, and then crashing in my room. The house was quiet, as it always was, and after a long day of just lounging around, I finally settled into the couch for the night. I was flipping through Netflix, trying to find something to watch when my phone buzzed. I checked it, just a random notification, nothing important. But right then, as I was about to put the phone back down, I thought I heard something. It was faint, like a soft tap. Just one tap, coming from somewhere deeper in the house. I paused, muting the TV for a second, straining to listen. Silence. I shrugged it off. Old houses make weird noises, right? I've lived here long enough to know that the pipes groan, the wood creaks, and sometimes the wind outside just rattles the windows. No big deal. I turned the volume back up and kept scrolling through the movie list. A few minutes passed. I had just settled on some mindless horror flick, because why not, right, when there it was again. Tap tap. This time, it was louder. Clearer. Coming from upstairs. Now, that made me pause. Upstairs was off limits for the night. I wasn't planning to go up there until I was ready to crash. No one else was in the house, and it was just weird that the sound came from up there. It sounded like it was coming from my room. I muted the TV again, heart pounding a little faster now. I stared at the ceiling as if I could see through it, trying to figure out what the hell was going on. The silence stretched on for what felt like forever. And then, tap tap tap. 3 quick knocks, like someone was knocking on my bedroom door. My throat went dry. There was no way anyone could be in the house. I had locked all the doors, all the windows were shut, and it's not like I'd invited anyone over. I tried to think rationally. Maybe it was something falling over. Maybe the wind outside was causing something to bump around up there. But then again, it wasn't windy. I grabbed my phone, switching on the flashlight app, and slowly stood up. My mind raced with a dozen different possibilities, none of them good. For a moment, I thought about calling someone, but then I shook it off. I couldn't freak out over nothing. I had to at least check. With my phone flashlight cutting through the dim living room, I made my way toward the staircase. Each step felt heavy, like I was walking through quicksand. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, I stopped and listened again. Silence. My pulse was pounding in my ears, but there was no more tapping. Just the quiet hum of the house. I took the first step up, then another. My feet felt like lead. When I reached the top of the stairs, the hallway stretched out before me, bathed in shadows. My bedroom door was slightly ajar, just like I had left it, but something felt wrong. The air up here felt colder, like a chill had settled in that part of the house. I shined the light down the hallway, scanning the doors. All of them were closed except for mine. I was about to step forward when, out of the corner of my eye, I saw something, a shadow, quick and fleeting, moving past my door. I froze. The flashlight wobbled in my hand as I tried to convince myself that it was nothing. Maybe it was a trick of the light. Maybe my brain was playing games with me because I was already on edge. But then I heard it. The softest whisper, barely audible but unmistakable, coming from inside my room. "Come in." My stomach dropped. Every instinct screamed at me to turn around, to run back downstairs, to lock myself in the living room and wait for morning. But I couldn't move. I stood there, frozen, staring at the half-open door. That whisper, it didn't sound like a person. It was too faint, too distorted, like it was coming from a long way off, even though I knew it was right there. My feet moved on their own, carrying me closer to the door. My hand reached out, fingertips brushing the edge of the wood. I nudged it open slowly, the door creaking as it revealed the dark space inside. My room was just as I had left it. Bed made, clothes scattered on the floor, everything in its place. But it felt different. The air was thick, like it was pressing in on me from all sides. My phone flashlight darted around the room, landing on the far corner where my closet stood. The door was open. I never leave my closet open. Suddenly, the tapping noise came again, but this time it wasn't from outside the room. It was from inside the closet. I swallowed hard, my heart hammering in my chest. I wasn't going to open that closet. No way. I wasn't about to be that idiot in the horror movie who investigates the creepy noise only to get snatched by some supernatural monster. But as I stepped back toward the door, the whisper came again. "Come in." It was louder this time. Closer. It felt like it was coming from right behind me. I spun around, my flashlight shaking in my hand as I scanned the room, my breath coming in shallow gasps. The room was empty. There was nothing there. But the air felt so cold, so heavy, it was like the walls were closing in. The light in my hand flickered, casting long shadows that danced across the walls. Then, just as I was about to bolt out of the room, the closet door creaked open wider. My flashlight beam caught something, movement, a figure, standing just inside the closet. My blood ran cold. It was a shadow, tall and thin, its shape barely discernible in the dark, but I could see the outline of its arms hanging at its sides. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. The figure stepped forward, just a tiny shift, and that's when I saw its face, or what was supposed to be its face. There were no eyes, no mouth, just a blank, smooth surface where a face should have been. My heart felt like it was going to explode in my chest. I turned and ran, nearly tripping over my own feet as I bolted down the hallway. Behind me, I heard the closet door slam shut with a bang, and the whisper echoed after me, growing louder and more insistent. "Come back." I stumbled down the stairs, nearly falling in my panic, and threw myself onto the couch in the living room, my phone clattering to the floor. I scrambled to grab it, my hands shaking as I tried to call someone, anyone, but the screen was frozen. The flashlight blinked once and then went out, leaving me in complete darkness. The house was silent again, but it wasn't the comforting kind of quiet. It was the kind that felt wrong, like the calm before something terrible. My breathing was ragged, my mind racing. I wanted to scream, to cry, to get out of the house, but I couldn't make myself move. I sat there, curled up on the couch, staring into the darkness, waiting for something, anything, to happen. Then, from upstairs, I heard the faint sound of footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. They were coming down the stairs. My skin crawled, and I felt like I was about to throw up. I clutched my phone, willing it to work, but the screen remained dark. I pressed myself back into the cushions of the couch, my eyes locked on the staircase as the footsteps grew louder, each one echoing through the house like a death knell. I saw it. A shadow at the top of the stairs. The same tall, thin figure, its head tilted slightly as it began to descend, one step at a time. The air grew colder with each step it took, and I could feel my breath freezing in my lungs. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the figure as it reached the bottom of the stairs, standing in the entrance to the living room. It didn't move. It just stood there, watching, or at least, I thought it was watching, even though it didn't have eyes. The pressure in the room was unbearable now, the walls seeming to close in, the darkness pressing down on me. Then it spoke again. "Come with me." Its voice wasn't a whisper anymore. It was deep, echoing, like it was coming from all around me. My heart pounded in my ears, and I could feel my body trembling uncontrollably. I didn't know what to do, where to go. I was trapped. The figure took a step forward, and I bolted. I ran for the front door, my legs shaking beneath me, barely able to keep me upright. My hands fumbled with the lock, my mind screaming at me to hurry, to get out. I could hear the figure moving behind me, slow and deliberate, its footsteps heavy on the wooden floor. Finally, I got the door open and burst outside, gasping for air as I stumbled into the cold night. I didn't stop running until I was halfway down the street, my lungs burning, my legs numb from the cold. When I finally looked back, the house loomed in the distance, dark and silent. But standing in the doorway, I saw it. The figure. Tall and thin, its head still tilted, watching me from the shadows of the house. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at it, waiting for it to come after me. But it never did. It just stood there, watching, as if it was waiting for me to come back. I haven't been back to that house since. I couldn't. Every time I think about it, I hear the whisper again, that awful, distorted voice. "Come with me." I stayed in a daze, the cold air stinging my skin and the night silent around me, but my thoughts were racing. That thing, whatever it was still watching me. I could feel its presence even though I was halfway down the block, barely able to breathe. The worst part? The figure just stood there. It didn't run after me or vanish into thin air like some nightmare. It just waited. I took a few more shaky steps backward, never taking my eyes off the house. There wasn't a single light on inside now. It looked like an empty, abandoned shell, but I knew better. I knew what was inside, watching, waiting. I could feel the pull of it, like a gravity tugging at me, urging me to come back. I wasn't going back. Not a chance. My hand shook as I fumbled for my phone again, desperate to call someone, anyone. But when I unlocked the screen, I saw that the signal was dead. No service. The phone screen flickered once, then shut off completely. Dead. A heavy weight settled in my stomach as I stared at the dark screen, my heartbeat quickening again. Something was wrong. I was out of the house, but the fear didn't ease. The night around me felt unnatural, too quiet, too still. The world seemed to have frozen in place, like I'd stepped out of reality and into some twisted nightmare where the rules didn't apply. I turned around and looked at the houses lining the street, expecting to see lights on, maybe someone peeking out a window. But everything was dark. Not just in my house, but the entire block. Every house. Every street light. Even the moon was hidden behind thick, unmoving clouds. The only sound was the faint rustle of leaves in the breeze, but it wasn't enough to break the overwhelming silence. For a second, I thought about knocking on a neighbor's door, but something held me back. A strange sense of dread twisted in my gut. What if they didn't open? What if they couldn't? I took a few more steps down the street, glancing over my shoulder every few seconds, half expecting the figure to be following me. But it wasn't. It just stood in the doorway, waiting, patient. I kept walking, faster now, my breath visible in the cold air. I wasn't sure where I was going. Maybe I'd head to a friend's house, maybe just keep walking until I could find a gas station or a place with people. But as I walked, the silence followed me. No cars drove by, no dogs barked, no crickets chirped. It was like the whole neighborhood had fallen under some kind of dark, unnatural spell. My footsteps echoed on the pavement, the only sound in the suffocating quiet. The chill in the air had deepened, and I rubbed my arms to stay warm, but it wasn't just the cold getting to me. It was the weight of something watching, something unseen but felt. After what felt like forever, I reached the end of the block. There was an intersection where I could turn toward town, where the streets would hopefully be brighter, more alive. I glanced over my shoulder one last time, and my blood ran cold. The figure was gone. The doorway to my house was empty now, just a dark, gaping mouth leading into the unknown. But the street was still dead silent. My heart skipped a beat, and I turned to face the intersection again, only to stop dead in my tracks. Standing there, at the edge of the corner, was the figure. It hadn't run. It hadn't chased me. It was just there. Its tall, thin form stood motionless, the head still slightly tilted like it was studying me. The streetlight nearest to it flickered, casting long, eerie shadows over its form. I stepped back, my legs shaky, barely able to hold myself upright. This couldn't be real. How had it moved so fast? How was it still here, waiting for me, no matter how far I ran? I swallowed hard, fighting the rising panic that threatened to paralyze me. I had to keep moving. I couldn't let it catch me. Without thinking, I turned down the street and started running again, my feet pounding against the pavement. My breath came in ragged gasps as I pushed myself harder, faster, desperate to get away from whatever was following me. I didn't look back this time. I couldn't. If I looked back, I was sure I'd see it standing right behind me, reaching out with those long, twisted arms. My legs burned, and my lungs screamed for air, but I kept going, the fear driving me forward like a wild animal fleeing from a predator. After what felt like an eternity, I finally saw lights up ahead, real lights. The glowing neon of a 24-hour diner, the parking lot half full with a few late-night cars. I stumbled toward it, my vision blurring as I pushed the door open and collapsed inside. The warmth hit me like a wave, and for a second, I just stood there, trying to catch my breath, trying to calm my racing heart. The diner was quiet, just a few people scattered at tables, sipping coffee or staring at their phones. It felt normal. So normal that for a brief, fleeting moment, I thought maybe I had imagined everything. But then I caught my reflection in the window. My face was pale, my hair a mess, and my eyes wide and terrified. It was real. All of it. And it wasn't over. I grabbed my phone from my pocket, praying that I'd finally have a signal here. When I turned it on, relief washed over me as the screen lit up and the signal bars appeared. I immediately dialed my friend Dave, my hands shaking so bad I almost dropped the phone. The line rang twice before he picked up, his voice groggy from sleep. "Dude, it's like 2 a.m. What the hell?" "Dave," I whispered, glancing nervously toward the door, half expecting to see the figure standing outside the diner. Something's happening. I need you to come get me. Now." "What?" His voice woke up a bit, concern creeping in. Where are you? What's going on? I don't know, man. I'm at that diner on Maple and 6th. Something's after me. I stopped mid-sentence, my blood running cold. In the reflection of the diner's window, I saw it again. The figure. It was standing across the street, just outside the glow of the streetlights, its head still tilted in that unnatural way. Watching. I stood up from the booth, my voice shaking. Dave, I need you to come now. It's here. It followed me. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and then Dave's voice dropped. What are you talking about? What's there? I don't know what it is, I hissed, glancing back at the door. But it's not human, Dave. The line went dead. I stared at my phone in disbelief, trying to reconnect, but there was no signal again. The diner's lights flickered once, twice, and then the quiet chatter of the few patrons died as the whole place plunged into darkness. My breath caught in my throat. The diner was silent now, the hum of conversation replaced by a tense, oppressive stillness. My heart pounded in my chest as I slowly turned to look outside, where the figure had been standing. It was gone. But I knew better than to think I was safe. The lights flickered back on, casting harsh shadows across the empty booths. I could hear my own breath, shaky and uneven, and in the reflection of the window, I caught the slightest movement. Behind me, in the diner. I turned slowly, and there it was. The figure, standing in the corner of the diner, tall and thin, its head still tilted as it watched me. The other patrons didn't seem to notice it. They sat in their booths, completely unaware, sipping their coffee like nothing was wrong. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, its presence overwhelming, suffocating. The air in the diner grew colder, the lights flickering again as the shadows stretched longer, darker. I backed away, my body trembling uncontrollably. I didn't know what it wanted, why it was following me, but I knew one thing for sure, I couldn't run forever. As I stumbled toward the exit, the figure finally moved. It took a slow, deliberate step forward, its long arms reaching out as the whispers started again. Come with me. I ran. I didn't care where I was going, I just needed to get away. The whispers followed me, growing louder, more insistent. They filled my mind, drowning out everything else. I could feel the figure behind me, its presence pressing down on me, suffocating me with its darkness. And then, suddenly, the whispers stopped. I found myself standing in the middle of an empty street, the cold night air biting at my skin. I was alone. The figure was gone. For now. But I knew it would come back. It always came back. And next time, I wasn't sure I'd be able to run. The night was cold, but I didn't feel it. I couldn't. Not with the adrenaline still surging through my body, freezing me in a grip of sheer panic. I stood in the middle of the street, gasping for air, my breath puffing out in small clouds that hung in the air before dissolving into the darkness. The distant hum of the city echoed faintly in the background, but it felt like I had been ripped out of reality and dumped into a nightmare that I couldn't escape. For a moment, everything was still. Too still. The kind of stillness that makes you question if time has stopped or if you're the only living thing in the world. I scanned the empty street around me, the streetlights flickering like they were about to give out. There were no cars, no people, nothing but me in the shadows creeping along the edges of my vision. And then, of course, there was it. I didn't need to turn around to know it was there. The feeling was the same, oppressive, suffocating, like a weight pressing down on my chest. The hair on the back of my neck stood up, and every instinct screamed at me to run. But where? No matter where I went, no matter how far I ran, it always found me. I turned slowly, hoping against hope that maybe, just maybe, I was wrong. That somehow, it hadn't followed me again. But as my eyes adjusted to the dim light, I saw it. Standing at the far end of the street, barely illuminated by the flickering streetlights, was the figure. Tall, thin, its face still nothing but a blank, smooth surface. It stood there motionless, its head slightly tilted as if studying me, waiting. It always waited. The fear surged through me, stronger than before, and for a split second, I was frozen in place, staring at the thing that had haunted me for hours, days, God, maybe even longer. It felt like I'd been running from this thing forever. I could hear it now, too. That whisper. Soft, barely audible, but enough to send shivers racing down my spine. Come with me. I shook my head violently, backing up, my feet stumbling over the uneven cracks in the street. No. I wasn't going with it. Whatever it wanted, whatever it was, I wasn't going. I had to keep moving, keep running, even if I didn't know where I was going. Anywhere but here. Anywhere that wasn't near this thing. My phone was dead, and I had no way of calling anyone for help. It didn't matter, though. I was too far gone for help to make a difference. The world around me felt distant, like I was trapped inside a bubble, cut off from everything I knew. This wasn't just about being alone. This was about something far darker, far older than I could understand. I took off running again, my legs burning with each step as I pushed myself harder than before. The street blurred by, the lights flickering as I passed under them. I didn't dare look back, I couldn't. The last time I'd glanced behind me, the figure had been too close. Too close to escape. And yet, somehow, I had. The whispers chased me, growing louder in my mind. I could almost feel them brushing against my skin, cold and sharp like a winter wind. You can't hide. We're waiting. Come with me. I kept running, my breath hitching in my throat as I sprinted down the desolate street. The buildings seemed to close in around me, the dark windows staring at me like hollow eyes. My vision tunneled, and my chest ached with every breath, but I couldn't stop. I had to keep moving. The figure was always there, always just out of sight but close enough to feel. I rounded a corner, skidding to a stop in front of an old, run-down gas station. The neon sign above flickered weakly, casting a sickly green glow over the cracked pavement. For a second, I thought about hiding inside. Maybe there would be someone there, an attendant, someone who could help. But even as I thought it, I knew it was hopeless. The figure would follow me inside. It would never stop. Still, I couldn't keep running. My legs were on fire, and I needed to catch my breath. With a quick glance over my shoulder, I darted inside the gas station, my heart thudding in my chest. The bell above the door jingled as I stepped inside, the sound unnervingly loud in the otherwise empty space. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a harsh glow over the aisles of dusty shelves and faded products. The place looked abandoned, but the lights were on, and there was a faint hum of an old refrigerator in the back. Hello? I called out, my voice shaky. Is anyone here? No answer. Of course. I moved to the counter, peering over the edge to see if anyone was behind it, but there was no one. The register was covered in a layer of dust, and the magazines on the nearby rack looked like they hadn't been touched in years. My heart sank. I was alone. Completely, utterly alone. I backed up slowly, my eyes darting toward the windows, expecting to see the figure standing just outside. But the street outside was empty. No movement. No sign of the figure. Maybe I had lost it. Maybe, just maybe, I had finally outrun it. I allowed myself to hope for just a second before the lights flickered above me, casting long, distorted shadows across the floor. The air in the gas station grew colder, and that familiar sense of dread returned, wrapping itself around me like a suffocating blanket. No, I couldn't outrun it. I knew that. It always came back. The whispers started again, soft at first, like a distant wind rustling through the trees. But they grew louder, more insistent, filling the empty space of the gas station with a sound that made my skin crawl. Come with me. We're waiting. My stomach churned, and I backed up further, pressing myself against the cold glass door. The air felt heavy, thick with something I couldn't explain. The shadows around me seemed to move, shifting and twisting in the corners of my vision. And then, I saw it. In the far corner of the gas station, near the back where the shelves were nearly empty, the figure stood. It was half hidden in the shadows, but I could see it clearly. Its tall, thin form. Its featureless face. Its long arms hanging unnaturally at its sides. The same figure that had been following me all night. But something was different this time. It wasn't just standing there, waiting. It was closer. So much closer. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. My body was frozen in place, my back pressed against the door, my heart hammering in my chest. I wanted to scream, but the sound was trapped in my throat, swallowed by the overwhelming fear that had taken hold of me. The figure tilted its head, just slightly, as if considering me. And then, without a sound, it began to move. It didn't walk. It glided. Smoothly, silently, across the floor toward me. Its limbs moved in unnatural, jerky motions, like it wasn't used to having a body. Like it didn't belong in this world. The shadows seemed to shift with it, warping and twisting around its form. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't obey. I was stuck, frozen in place as the figure came closer and closer. The whispers grew louder, filling my mind with their haunting voices, drowning out everything else. Come with me. You can't escape. I pressed harder against the door, willing it to open, to let me out, but it wouldn't budge. The cold glass pressed against my back, and I could feel the presence of the figure closing in. It was only a few feet away now, its featureless face tilted toward mine. Then, something happened. The lights above flickered again, and for a brief second, I was plunged into total darkness. And in that moment, I felt something more than just fear. It was like the air around me had shifted, like the world itself had bent out of shape. And then I heard it. A voice. But this time, it wasn't the figure's voice. It was something else. Something older. Run. It was a single word, but it broke through the paralysis that had gripped me. My body jolted into action, and before I knew it, I was sprinting toward the back of the gas station, toward the door leading out into the alley. I didn't think, I just ran. The door swung open easily, and I burst out into the cold night, gasping for air as I stumbled into the narrow alleyway. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might explode, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. I ran down the alley, my legs burning, my lungs screaming for air. Behind me, I heard the sound of glass shattering. The figure was coming after me. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I just kept running, my feet pounding against the pavement as I darted through the narrow alley, weaving between dumpsters and piles of garbage. The whispers followed me, growing louder, more desperate. But that other voice, the one that had told me to run, it was still there, too. It was quieter now, but I could feel its presence, urging me forward, guiding me through the darkness. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't care. I just had to keep moving. I had to get away from the figure, from the whispers, from the darkness that was closing in around me. And then, suddenly, I was out. I burst out of the alley and into an open street, the bright lights of the city hitting me like a wave. Cars zipped by, their headlights blinding me for a moment, and the sound of honking horns and voices filled the air. I stumbled forward, gasping for breath, and collapsed onto the sidewalk, my legs finally giving out. I lay there for a moment, my chest heaving, my vision swimming. The whispers were gone. The figure was gone. I was safe. I didn't know how long I lay there, but eventually, I pulled myself up and looked around. The street was busy now, filled with people going about their lives, completely unaware of what I had just been through. I felt like I had been ripped out of another world and dropped back into this one. But I knew it wasn't over. Not really. That figure, whatever it was still out there. And it would come for me again. Maybe not tonight, maybe not tomorrow, but someday. And next time, I wasn't sure if I'd be able to run fast enough. As I stood there, trying to catch my breath, I heard it again. That same voice. Run. I looked around, but there was no one near me. Just the busy street, the cars, the people. But I knew the voice was real. I knew it had saved me. For now. But deep down, I could still feel the figure's presence, lurking in the shadows, waiting. It always waited. And when it came again, I wasn't sure if I'd be able to escape.